All right, so this video that you're going to watch today is going to be about satire. And satire is a really important literary element to understand as we move into our novel Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. We're also going to read the short story Harrison Bergeron. Both contain a lot of satire. So you've probably already seen satire a lot, but didn't even realize that it was satire. And this PowerPoint will hopefully make sure that you understand what satire is and that you can identify it when you see it. So first of all, it's the art of criticizing. You're making fun of something. You're using humor to make fun of something that you want to see changed. So a lot of times satire's been used to ridicule politics and religion that people were not happy with and wanted to see change in. And we can see satire being used in art, music, literature, television, film, cartoons. And as you look at this one down here, this is satire. Still loving it? And it's showing, of course, Ronald McDonald very overweight, because assuming they want to see change in the fast food industry so that we don't have a obese society. That's an example of satire. Satire came about in the early 17th century, which is the time when Jonathan Swift was writing, and you've probably heard of one of his stories called Gulliver's Travels. And it's got all these little people in it, and this big giant Gulliver lands on the island. And we look at that, or we look at Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, also a satire. And we look at those as children's stories, but in actuality, they were written to satirize the government and to try to get change to occur in the way the government was running society in that time period. It really became popular in the 18th century. So Alexander Pope wrote a long poem called The Rape of the Lock, and Jonathan Swift wrote Gulliver's Travels, and like I said, Lewis Carroll wrote Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, and all of these are satires where they're trying to get the attention of the government or people that are running the religion of the state at that time and to get change. We might have also, or you might have also have heard of Mark Twain, because he was in the 1800s, early 1900s in the United States, and he wrote Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, both of which are satires against what was going on in our society at the time with how we were treating the black race. At that time they were called Negroes or something worse. George Orwell was a great satirist, and he wrote two of my favorite books, Animal Farm in 1984, also satirizing the way our country, our world was being run, and he was predicting what was going to happen to our world if we didn't stand up against people like Stalin and other cruel leaders that were taking control and manipulating our people, our society. Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart are two very popular satirists today that you might have heard of. They're on comedy channels, and they take what's happening in the news and they satirize it. They ridicule it. They use humor when they discuss it because they are trying to get change, but they're doing it through humor. So there's a picture of Stephen Colbert from the Colbert Report, political satire. There are two very R-rated movies called Borat and The Interview, but they're also satires, if you've heard of them. And they're using very R-rated humor to show what they're not happy about in our world today and what we need to change, what we need change in. There's a website called The Onion. And if you want to open up this PowerPoint and click on the hyperlink, you can see an example of the type of stories that they put on The Onion, and it's also satire. It's all fabricated. It's all false. So when you go to a website like The Onion, please know that it's not true stories. They're satire, making fun of things that they want to see changed, as do editorial cartoonists, like this one. This guy's all wrapped up. Maybe he was texting and walking across the street and got hit by a bus. I don't know. But he still wants to be able to text with his like one free hand that's not wrapped up. Okay, a satire against our society today and how addicted we are to texting, even if it means destroying our lives. This is funny if you do want to look at the Onion thing. It's a satire on presidents using teleprompters for everything that they have to say to us and share to us. So there are different elements of satire, and you need to be aware of those so that you can identify them in satire. A lot of satire uses hyperboles, which is extreme exaggeration. They'll do understatements, which is saying less than what actually is true. Like if I say, you know, like if I haven't eaten all day and I say, yeah, I'm a bit hungry, when like my stomach's growling so loudly you could hear it across the hallway, that's an understatement. An allegory is where there's a hidden message in the story, like a hidden meaning in it. It could be a moral one, a political one, a religious one. Dramatic and situational and verbal ironies are three types of irony that we see in satires. Dramatic irony is when we know something that the characters don't. So like if you've ever seen the movie Happy Gilmore, which is an old movie, I know, but at one point, like everyone gets out of the swimming pool because they think somebody pooped in it. But in actuality, it's just a candy bar. And we know that, and we think it's funny, especially when somebody jumps in and takes a bite out of it. But the actors are all like grossed out because they don't realize it's just a candy bar. That's dramatic irony. Situational irony is when something opposite to what we think would happen happens. For instance, I was watching the news about a month ago with all the wildfires in California, and the chief, the fire chief who was out fighting the fires, his house burned down from the wildfires, which you don't usually expect to happen. It would kind of be like if the fire station burnt down while all the firefighters are out fighting the fires. That's situational irony. If a cop gets pulled over for speeding, and when he was on duty, he had written like 5 speeding tickets to other people. Situational irony. And verbal irony is when the intended meaning of a statement is different from the actual. So it's like sarcasm. When we use sarcasm, that's verbal irony. Innuendos are like indirect suggestions to something. So if there was a teacher at a school and his name was Mr. Chokumchild, that would be an innuendo that he doesn't really like children, even though he's a teacher, because his name is Mr. Chokumchild. And that would be like, of course, in a book. And I think it's the name of a character in a Dickens book, if I'm not mistaken. And then lastly, stereotyping is done a lot in satires. So here are examples of caricatures, which I'm sure you've seen before. And this, you can also do caricatures of institutions or ideas, like this man carrying the debt on his shoulders and how school buses are packed with really happy children, of course. And here's an example of satire. So Brad Paisley and LL Cool J did a song called Accidental Racist, and this is the link to the actual song if you want to see it and hear it. It's a video, and you can see what the lyrics really are. And then Saturday Night Live did a satire on that song. So obviously they didn't like a lot of the things that were in the song, and instead of just talking about it straight up, they did a humorous act on it and did a satire on the song and what they didn't like about it, if you want to watch that. And there you have it. So a little information about satire as we start to dive into first Harrison Bergeron, which is the short story we're going to be reading and studying. And then eventually we'll go into the novel Fahrenheit 451. So satire, using humor to ridicule something that you're not happy about and hope to get change.